Hello and welcome to Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms, the podcast that provides you with all the latest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you are looking to substantially increase your caseload in the next 6 months, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's the host of our show, the local business guy himself, Frank Deming.
Hello, everyone. This is Frank Deming, the local business guy, and welcome to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day, everyone. I hope you guys are having rocking a week thus far. Today is Meet the Attorney. Another episode of Meet the Attorney. As you know, we do this twice a month where I introduce you to some of the best legal minds this country has ever seen. And today is no different because I'm introducing you to the great Elijah Keys. How's it going, Elijah?
That's quite an introduction. Thanks for having me. Appreciate that.
Hey, well deserved. I said a few things about you already in the pre-intro, but in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So I've been doing estate planning for almost 15 years. I think it's 13 or 14 years now. What my firm does is that we actually meet with people and we try to understand what they need. And we find solutions to really complex problems. About 40% of our work actually comes from referrals from other attorneys where the cases are too difficult. And that's really where we focus our attention. I worked for other people for about 10 years as a lawyer. I worked in different estate firms and they did very complex work. I was commuting about an hour and a half each way to my last employment where I was a partner at a kind of medium-sized firm, and I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So now I have my own firm in a little city called Milpitas, just outside of San Jose in Silicon Valley. Most of my clients are engineers, as you might expect, because engineering is huge here, right? A lot of tech people. And that's fine. We have specific practices and specific work that we do for people of different types of problems, right? So something that we subspecialize in, because there's estate planning, there's a lot to it. Something that we subspecialize in is estate planning for people with disabilities and who have mental issues. And so I spoke today with a potential client who's spending a huge amount of money on caregiving, I think hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And she wants to expand that. And so we just have to talk to her about her issues, about her future, about who her representatives are. And we have to kind of scope out a plan and see what's actually going to work for her. Every single estate planner uses similar tools. They're just tools in a toolbox. We do 18 different types of trusts. So tools in a toolbox allow us to fix a lot of different problems.
18 different types of trusts?
That's right.
Huh. Now, is that because of, now is that state specific? Is that because you're in California that you have to do it like that, or?
Partially. California is weird from the rest of the country because they're called a community property state. Mm-hmm. A lot of states, if a husband earns money and the wife stays home, the husband earns it until the court says that he has to give it to the wife in some sort of divorce or separation. California says that when the husband earns money, or the wife, that it's owned 50-50 by each. And so there's very specific tools that we have to use for those purposes. But a lot of the trusts that we use are specifically case specific. So let me give you an example. A parent who has an autistic child might need some benefits in the future, like Medicaid, right? Mm-hmm. Medicaid in New Jersey or Medicaid in Oklahoma or wherever they are. They might also need government benefits from the Social Security Administration. Well, they can't have a lot of money. The parents can't give them an inheritance. So what do? You create something called a supplemental needs trust that is designed specifically to allow us to hold money for the child with still allowing the child to get the Medicaid benefits. Different type of trust that I'm creating now for a different client is to hold life insurance. Hold life insurance to basically avoid estate tax, or I should say pay estate tax after someone passes away without increasing the burden. So these clients have about $40 million. And if something happens to both of them, there's going to be a huge tax bill for the kids. Well, the kids don't want to pay that huge tax bill. So instead, we set up a life insurance arrangement, which doesn't add to the tax burden, but gives them money to pay the bill.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. So do you have, is it a different way of structuring it depending on your net worth? I'm assuming it's got to be something like different.
There's a few bright lines. So let's start with two kind of simple bright lines. I don't want to say simple, but I want to say straightforward. It's two straightforward bright lines. There's a federal estate tax. So someone that has more than, this year it's 12.92 million. Next year it'll be higher. It's going to drop to about maybe 7 in 2026. But if someone has more than $13 million in their name when they die, the feds are going to take a cut. They take a 40% cut of everything over 13 million. 40%? There's specific tools. 40, yeah. There's specific tools to avoid that. There's tools to limit the money, to get money somewhere else, but that's the first one. The second one is that different states have a similar type of tax. Even cities have a tax. For example, I think New York City, as well as New York State, both have estate taxes, as does Massachusetts. But for example, California and New Hampshire do not, from my understanding. So there is no estate tax in some places. There is estate tax in others. So there are specific tools that you use to try to prevent the government from getting a lot of money. The most important thing in estate planning, the absolute most important thing, is to make sure that people are safe, right? Mm-hmm. If you have an elderly parent, or perhaps you're aging, the worst situation that can happen is that someone loses mental ability and no one's there to help them. And now you have the sharks that come in. You have the predators that come in, and they, I talk a lot to my clients about the Swedish nurse syndrome, where an elderly man that has dementia has some young, beautiful woman who comes to him and just starts taking his stuff, right? Because he's susceptible, but no one is there to protect him. And so she finds ways to just start stealing. A lot of my work is to protect people. The second step, once we protect people, is make sure that we can maximize the value that individuals receive. The most important, protect people as they're the most susceptible.
Gotcha. Now, let's say, so obviously, well, before I ask you that question, let me ask you this question. You work primarily with people with high net worth. What's the sweet spot?
It's a misnomer. So sweet spot for me is actually somewhere between about 2 and 10 million. So it's not people that have a huge amount of net worth. It's people that might have a moderate but very comfortable living. Our firm handles anywhere up to about 40 to 50 million in assets, but I have people in here all the time that have, $100,000, $200,000 of assets. Our firm is not an ultra high net worth firm. It's not what we do. That requires a very specific focus, and we refer a lot of cases out. But we can handle somewhere up to about 40 or 50 million. The most dramatic examples are people that have a lot of money, but that's just because they have a lot to protect, right? But the main example might be a husband and a wife that has some concerns about their children. Let me give you an example. I have some clients right now where they hate their son-in-law. They think that their daughter is wonderful, but they have a really rocky marriage. He has a gambling problem. They have a rocky marriage because of money concerns. He's gone for days on end. They think that if they give her an inheritance, that he'll try to steal it, right? And so we're working with them to try to protect the kids. They have about 3 or 4 million. I don't want to say that lightly, because $3 to $4 million is a lot of money, right? But at the same time, if they have 5 kids, each kid is going to inherit $600,000. Yes, and so you have to look at what is the practical line to spending $10,000, $20,000 with an attorney. Is it worth it to spend a huge amount of money with somebody to actually protect that? And so in this situation, we took a more simple approach where we set up something called a dynasty trust for the kid, where essentially the daughter inherits things in a trust that she doesn't own, but she's the only one that can touch it. So if there's a divorce, he gets the benefit of her using that money as long as he's with her. And when he's not, the money stays with her. It can't mix with a spouse, so it can't be lost in a divorce.
That's an interesting case there. Yeah, because I'm assuming that happens a lot. Because it's, not everyone likes their children's choice of spouses.
Yeah. I wish, being in the financial industry, I wish that people looked at data. I'm a data guy. I like information. I found that the Department of Labor has done research on what makes a successful marriage. And it floors me that I know this. And so my wife and I, we've read the papers, we've discussed it amongst ourselves, and we know that our chance for divorce is less than 1%, simply because we've arranged our family in the way that statistically will enforce a long marriage. Some people, they just don't know. And maybe they don't want to.
You should write a book, man. Maybe you'll cure the divorce rate.
I don't know if people are going to listen to an old, overweight, balding Jewish guy. I don't know about that. They might not appreciate my comments. I don't, I never want people to think that I'm talking down to them just because I've researched and I've actually incorporated a lot of these principles in my life. But at the same time, a lot of them really work. And I wish, I try to help my clients as much as I can, but they have to live their own lives. I can't live their life for them.
You mentioned that 30 to 40%, I think you said, of your clients come from referrals, correct?
That's correct.
I would imagine a good number of that come from, say, family law attorneys, right? Like people.
Probably about 5% of the. I don't want to say 5% of the referrals. Maybe about 4 to 5% of our clients come from referrals from family law attorneys. There are lawyers who specialize in divorce cases. We can handle them. It's not common, and we don't really market in that way. I think the reason why we don't do that is simply because we have such a strong base and background with incapacity and special needs planning, or I should say incapacity and disability planning, that we really focus on that because that's really what we're known for. I've handled plenty. I'm handling one right now with a woman who's currently in a divorce, and it's very state specific, but in California, you have to create and arrange the planning documents in a very careful way so that you don't violate court orders from the family law court.
Yeah. So you've mentioned the special needs thing. So there's a different avenue in terms of setting up trusts and estate plan with special needs. Can I elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. So a lot of states call it a supplemental needs trust. In my state, we call it special needs because California thinks that it's more special than it is. They just do. They do things differently, even though in the end it ends up being kind of the same way. They go a different way. So the Social Security Administration Code defines money that's inherited by a child as disqualifying them for most Medicaid as well as supplemental security income benefits. SSI is a Social Security benefit for people who are disabled and have never been able to work. It's not like disability benefits. It's like a disabled benefit for someone who's like an autistic child, or maybe someone had an injury as a child, right? And so you can't have, every state is different, but in general, you can't have more than $2,000 of liquid assets in your name and still receive those benefits. But some adults, they really need it. And so you can create something called a supplemental needs trust. Essentially, you control money in a special trust designed to qualify under the Social Security Administration Code. And that type of trust allows a child or an adult to hold money in that trust. They can't control it, but the money can only be used for them. And it allows them to keep those important benefits. When someone is disabled as an adult, the most important things that they need is they need healthcare and they need housing. And that's what SSI, Supplemental Security Income, and Medicaid, they're designed to provide those two things. And then the Supplemental Needs Trust is intended to supplement supplemental needs. It's intended to supplement that care, allow them to maintain those benefits long term.
Interesting. Now, is that anything special about California, or is every state pretty much the same?
No, they're national in scope. So a trust that's set up in any state is likely to work, maybe not work well, but is likely to function in every other state. And so the Social Security Administration codes are national in nature. SSI and Medicaid are administered locally, right? So you apply, or your local Social Security office, or you apply at your county or state social services office for Medicaid. But the rules are national in scope, and so our trusts have actually been complemented by the Social Security Administration as never being. We've never lost a case. We've never had one violated. In fact, they sent us a nice letter that said, "Good job, you did a good job on this." So,
that's great. That's great. So, And then what are the other attorneys besides family law that would, provide you with?
It's funny enough that when I worked for other firms, I wanted to market, but I couldn't market. If I marketed, I would have marketed for the firm. So I just marketed myself. So I gave, I think, between 30 and 40 different training seminars, just teaching other attorneys to do what I do. And my experience has been that if I give information away, then people simply bring back cases which are too complicated. They understand how to do the simple ones, that's fine, but they tend to bring back the cases that are more complicated. And so when I first started my practice, I didn't think that I was going to get a lot of work, and the work just started flooding in from estate planning attorneys, funny enough, because I had done so much training on complicated cases that they started sending me the complicated cases.
Gotcha.
So that's a lot of my referrals come from estate attorneys. We're trying to build and expand our referral network, which is why I'm doing marketing like this. We're trying to expand our referral network beyond our local estate planning partners, but that's where a lot of our referrals come from. The other the other 60 to 70% of our work comes from our local demographics here. Maybe people find us online. And a lot of former clients, they bring their friends, they bring themselves.
Yeah. And it's only in California, correct?
That's right. I have people that fly in from out of state, but in generally just to support people who are here in California. Because I try not to practice. I don't practice in other states. If a client is leaving the state, I tell them, well, if you're coming back, I can help you. But if you're planning to stay there, you got to find somebody else local, because the most important thing to me is to be reliable and to provide a high quality product. And I cannot provide a high quality product to somebody who's moving to your state in New Jersey. I just can't, because I don't know the local rules, right? I don't know the property tax rules. I don't know the Medicaid rules. I don't know the weird separate property rules that might be present there. I can't be my best. And so I don't want to do it.
Yeah, and trust me, we have a lot of crazy rules here.
Every state does. Every state does. Let me tell you, the weirdest one that I learned about one recently was that in Wisconsin, cattle is taxed for the federal government similar to land. I didn't know that. I don't know why, but there has to be a reason. Who knows? It's a weird rule.
That's funny. I am going to ask you something that I ask every estate attorney that I have on the show. Just kind of curious the answer that you give. What is the does everyone in your opinion, does everyone need an estate plan?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey guys, I hope you guys are enjoying today's content. While I have you on here, I want to introduce you to a promo that we have going on for the spring of 2024 for all legal practices throughout the U.S. I have an outstanding offer that we've never been able to offer before, but we want to do it because you have been an avid listener. We're only promoting this to people who listen to the show. So if you're an attorney and you are an avid listener to the show and you're thinking about possibly opening your own practice, you want to pay attention to this announcement. We are offering a full website with hosting, SSL certificate, online booking service, online appointment management, and more, and much, much more, with a 1-year maintenance, all for $2,250. That's $2,250 one-time fee, and you have a full-fledged website. If you want to know more about this, just give us a call at 888-416-7752 or send us an email at info@lbmsllc.com. Just make sure that you mentioned that you heard it on the show, and we'll definitely get you that discount. So with that, I'm going to bring you back to the content.
I think yes, but I don't think that everyone needs a complex plan. I think that at the base core function, everyone, 95% of people are going to become seriously ill before they die. There's a case out of Florida, a woman named Terry Shrivo. This happened, 20 years ago, where this woman named Terry Shrivo told her husband that she didn't want to be maintained on life support, but her parents disagreed. And she didn't want to live. Her husband said this is what she said, but she never wrote it down.
Mm.
So because she didn't write it down, she hit the mathematical lottery loser, right? I mean, not every situation is going bad, but hers did.
Yeah.
Parents sued to prevent the husband from pulling the plug because they had hope that their daughter was going to be able to recover from a traumatic brain injury. Now, maybe they were right. Maybe they were. But her wishes are paramount. And if she didn't write it down, then it's up to the courts to decide. And the courts are not going to decide based upon what she wants. The courts are going to decide based upon what the judge thinks is right. And the judge is going to think what's right in between the different people that are arguing, right? One person's going to be here, one person's going to be here, and the judge is going to decide here, but maybe the person wanted to be closer to this side of the street. And so my recommendation is that if people have not written down 2 documents at the very base core limit, the most important documents that they could write down to protect themselves is a power of attorney for financial management, to allow someone to manage your financial assets. And number 2, a healthcare directive. Some states call it a living will. Some states call it a power of attorney for healthcare. You need those 2 documents because if you cannot speak for yourself, no one can speak for you short of a court. And you need someone to be able to do that. The second thing that I think is important for everyone to do is if they have wishes that are different from what the state law says, and every state has laws on the books that are going to dictate what happens when they die. Every state law does. It's called intestacy. It happens in every single state. It happens in every country in the world. There are laws to govern your wishes. In the United States, we allow people to deviate from those wishes. If the wishes are the same and you're okay with a court process to transfer your assets, leave it alone if you don't want to. But if you want to exercise any type of control, you want any type of difference, anything that's different at all from what the state law requires, you just have to write it down. I'm working right now with a man who wants to give assets away as a list of 15 different beneficiaries. And he called me, and we have special circumstances if something is really an emergency. So I'm leaving this afternoon. I met with him yesterday. I'm leaving this afternoon. We're going to go sign with him, sign his plan. We're going to a hospital to sign because that's where he is. But if he didn't write it down, everything would go to someone that he didn't want. And that's heartbreaking to me to think that he designates that he wants something done. It's very important to him. It's very personal to him. It's very important to the way that he operates his life, that he wants things to go in this way. And if he doesn't sign it, it's not going to happen. And so my only recommendation to you, I only have 3. If you're talking just simple base requirements, number 1, sign a power of attorney for financial management. Number 2, sign a power of attorney for healthcare. It's called things in different states. And number 3, if you want to deviate from what the law says who your beneficiaries are, you just have to write it down. And if you don't write it down, then you are making a decision. The decision that you are making is you agree with the state rules. If you do not write down your own wishes, you affirmatively agree with the state rules because that's where you live. That's my only statement.
Wow. Thanks for that answer. It has to be the most elaborate answer to that question that I've had on the show thus far. But it's chilling to know that the courts have that much power over what happens to you after you're gone. That's interesting.
The laws are just the laws, right?
Yeah.
But the way the law is written everywhere, it's not like people are all locked in. They're not locked in. They just have to make a decision. The funny thing is that, I don't want to say it's funny, but the tragic thing that happens is that so many people die without ever writing anything down. Let's give the example of Prince. It's a really good example. For the artist formerly known as Prince, whatever his licensing issues were.
Whatever it is.
He was a fantastic artist. I think when he died, he had somewhere between 3 and 4 billion net worth, something like that. Most people don't know that maybe 5 or 6 years before he died, he became an ardent Jehovah's Witness. Very devoted. He was giving 90% of his income to his church. And most people don't know that.
Is that right? He
was giving 90% of his income to his church. He wanted to give them everything. When he joined the Jehovah's Witness church, his 2 children, from my understanding, this is my understanding, so I don't want to say anything incorrect, but from my understanding that they never wanted to talk to him again. They cut ties. I don't know if it was because of something else or because of his membership in the Jehovah's Witness church. I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. I'm just describing the situation here. And he wanted everything to go to his church. He wanted to donate it because those were the people that accepted him. That's where he felt at home. That's what he felt his cause was towards the end of his life. He died without a will. Guess who got everything?
Probably.
It's kids that disowned him. Because the law has a plan. Minnesota, which is where he lived, has a plan for you. And the plan is that if you don't say anything, we're going to go by family relationships. He wasn't married. Nope. He had no parents. He had no grandparents. He had kids. His kids got everything. The second thing that's a little bit scary is make sure that you choose who you can trust. Choose who is your administrator. Who's the person who's responsible for your decisions? Julio is a really good example. Julio passed away this year, maybe last year, late last year, maybe earlier this year. When he passed away, his manager said that he was worth $600,000. I don't know if I buy that. The manager is asking to administer the estate. Okay. Julio has between 6 and 9 children. We don't know exactly, but he has children. They are beneficiaries. Yeah. Who is the person who determines whether the manager gets money from the contracts that were solely between Julio and the manager and managed by the manager on Julio's behalf? The manager. The manager is the administrator.
So he determines.
That's a situation where Julio didn't write it down. And it's just the point where I wish that he had written it down and just named a third party so that someone would be determinative of that situation without having a hand in it, right? Person who has a hand in the situation should not be the person who's making the decision and asking the judge about the situation. Because now what we set up is we set up this person who says, I'm owed money under the contract and I'm responsible for the estate. And the children now have to fight him for his interpretation of the contract. And far be it from me to tell them what's right and wrong, right? It's not for me to tell them whether their situation is right, whether their situation is wrong. It's not my position because it's not me, right? I don't live that life. But just an outside observer sees that there's a conflict of interest that could have very easily been avoided by writing a one-page will that says, I, Julio, create a will and name an executor and then sign off. That would have solved the issue, but he didn't write it down. So because he didn't write it down, nobody knows what's in that, what he's actually owed, except for the person who's deciding whether he gets the money or he doesn't. And so that would make me very, now I don't want to say that the manager is doing anything wrong. Maybe the manager is doing a huge favor for the family. I don't know, but it's to the point where there's obviously an entanglement of loyalties. And I would like people to be able to trust and sleep at night, knowing that who they've chosen is going to be loyal to their family above anyone else.
Yeah. It's funny. One of the things I love about the Meet the Attorney edition of this show is I learned so much from you guys, from all types of, whether it be family laws, estate planning, personal injury. I learned so much from that because I would have never known that if I didn't have me on your show. And I've asked that question many times. So thanks a lot for that. What is the website where people could check you out and know about what you're all about?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I apologize.
No worries.
So our website is www.keyslawgroup.com. That's KEYES. It's S as in Sam. Law Group, LAWGROUP.com. If anybody wants to contact us, they can just call us 408-766-7668. What my passion is providing solutions to people and providing solutions in business. I love operating a law firm. My favorite thing I've ever done is operating a small business. We're growing. We're interested in networking with people. The only thing that I would ask is your listeners, if they're clients, go ahead and call in. But if they're other attorneys and they just want to network and just want to talk, fine. Just reach me over lunch. I'm working on client matters otherwise.
Gotcha. Well, I will definitely put a link to your website on there. I will also put a link to your LinkedIn in case anyone wants to just say hi on LinkedIn. If you're in the state of California and you have an estate planning type of question, hit them up. Definitely, if there's a special needs situation there, you want to hit him up because he is coined as the problem solver. And before I move on, And I know you're a very busy guy. I don't want to keep you on too long, but is there anything I did not ask you that you think will benefit the audience?
Oh, well, when people want to meet with an attorney, they want to know that they're actually a person, right? They're
Mhm.
not just some guy on a wall. So I leave at 5. The best thing that I ever did in my entire life is to set up a law firm 2 minutes from my kids' school. So I pick up my kids, I go home, greet my wife, and I spend the evening with my family. I'd work at different times, but if you want me to stay after 5, I'm not staying.
I like
Second
that.
thing that people would like to know is people's hobbies. So I like to do home improvement projects, and I like to do obstacle course races. So Spartan races, Tough Mudders, stuff like that. I love to go out and challenge myself. I'm not very good at it. I look probably pretty dumb, but it just gives me a reason to train. So something I like to do.
On the home improvement front, how deep do you get into that?
Oh, I don't do anything electrical or plumbing. That's for the experts. I don't want to electrocute
Uh,
myself again. And plumbing, I like fresh water, so I don't touch it.
I love it. That was awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Elijah. I think that was a very, very, very enlightening, at least for me, interview. I think a lot of people got a little bit of taste of what you're all about. But if you want to know more, definitely go to the show notes, hit him up. I'll put his number there. I'll put his website there and his LinkedIn. He's a great guy, and I think you're going to love working with him. So without further ado, I'm going to put an end to this episode. This has been Frank Deming, the local business guy. You've just been blessed by the great Elijah Keys. Take care, everyone. Until next week. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms, the podcast that provides you with all the latest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you would like to know more about the topic we discussed on the show today, reach out to Frank and his team at 888-416-7752 and schedule a discovery call with one of the marketing consultants. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, send an email to podcast@lbmsllc.com and we will put you on the schedule. With that being said, until next week, make it a successful digital marketing day. Peace out.